Morgan Morrison is the owner of a bakery in Charleston, West Virginia called Rock City Cake Company. Recently, she's begun posting videos on TikTok talking about her and her employees' experiences with a ghost that they have come to call Harry. She's also posted evidence that she's captured on her security cameras of the activity. This activity has been occurring since day one, reaching a fever pitch in late 2019, early 2020, and has proven to be quite bizarre, dramatic, and at times borderline dangerous. They've experienced your run-of-the-mill ghostly activity, things we have come to comfortably accept as just par for the course when it comes to the unseen. Lights flickering, electronics malfunctioning, a heavy feeling at times, disembodied sounds and bangs, even a shadow figure here and there. But what truly puts this haunting in a unique category all on its own is the inclusion of numerous facets of the ghost phenomenon that ordinarily we might attempt to keep compartmentalized. Facets like residual energy, intelligent energy, poltergeist activity, apportation, ghost lights and orbs, visual manifestations. All of these things culminating in this location bring to mind multiple precedent-setting dramatic cases throughout history, each individual one at least pointing predominantly to a force in particular, a type of ghost, a type of entity. But the nature of Morgan's haunting seems to be quite a bit more than that, based on the evidence that she's captured. It's beyond doubt she's being haunted. That's pretty clear. But this haunting is so peculiar, it's hard to even begin to understand by what, or who, why, how. It boggles the mind, and is the kind of story that keeps me digging deeper, makes my mind go to new places, and it keeps me coming back for more. I began this season with a belief in ghosts. That belief stands, though it's changed a little bit. On today's season finale, we will have a look back at some notable episodes and standout moments. We'll explore different theories about the ghostly and the haunted, different theories about consciousness, and something that I've only recently discovered that I think is worthy of consideration as well. As always with these finale episodes, I do not claim my final conclusion to be fact, correct, or even logical at all. It is based on what I have been able to tie together via the information that we have covered thus far and is meant for entertainment purposes only. Before we lay it all out in front of us, though, let me finally announce our Season 8 topic. This one I left to you, the viewers, the listeners, the followers on social, to vote. I gave you guys 5 options, and by day 2, it was clear we were leaving 3 of those options far behind us. That's okay. That's okay. There's a time and a place, and right now just wasn't their time. However, 2 of the topics immediately pulled ahead and remained neck and neck, resulting in a tie by the voting deadline: magic and Appalachian folklore and high strangeness. So, we had a little tiebreaker. And now, my dear listeners, the big reveal is here. Drum roll, please. The winner and our topic of investigation next season is Appalachian folklore and high strangeness. A topic so mysterious, dark, and vast, you have to have been born and bred there, baby, to truly understand it. Or so I have heard. We will all be learning something that we have never heard before. I am certain of it. Thanks to everyone who voted. I'm really excited to get into it and a little unnerved based on tidbits that I've picked up about Appalachian life and beliefs along the way. Those people, they don't seem to be playing around, okay? All right. I'm going to Easter egg drop the rest of our announcements throughout today's show, but we've got a ton of good information to get through, so let's get this puppy rolling. I'd like to begin with a broad overview of ghost theory options. One of the oldest theories about ghosts is the survival theory. Ghosts are the spirits of people who have died but remain tethered to the physical world for one reason or another. This theory has been around since early humanity and exists cross-culturally. This theory relies on two facts being true. Consciousness can survive beyond and outside of the body and brain, and that particular consciousness must be sticking around for a reason. All of which we have tackled this season: unfinished business, emotional trauma, physical trauma, traumatic deaths, quick deaths. And sometimes it's just as simple as they don't want to leave. This is the theory that most everyone is going to be familiar with. Imprint theory, or the residual haunting. This theory says ghosts are trapped, non-intelligent energy. The stone tape theory is based on this idea. A lot of researchers and thinkers of all walks were very keen on this idea. T.C. Lethbridge, Charles Babbage, basically. Joseph Rhodes Buchanan, coiner of the term psychometry, which is the ability to perceive residual energy attached to an object. The theory that ghosts and hauntings are looped, holographic movies on repeat, trapped by a physical location, material, or object is also quite well known and commonly accepted by the paranormal field today. There's a pretty big, significant difference between what we would label an intelligent haunting versus a residual. And for the most part, most investigators of today would agree that there appears to be a mixture of both types, depending on the account. Timeslip hypothesis. Ghosts aren't manifestations of the dead, but the living, slipping through alternate timelines, bleeding through from the current timelines, past or future. We are familiar with the concept that time is not linear. And if time is not linear, not singularly running from point A to point B, but instead runs in multiple streams, concurrently, crisscrossing, circularly, what have you, could the past and the present conceivably mesh together at certain moments? Are there certain places they intersect? The multidimensional hypothesis. This can easily tie in with belief that all ghosts are darker entities intent on deception. And my favorite go-to consideration during these final summarizing moments, the trickster entity. This idea says that ghosts are entities from another dimension. Certain scientists today theorize the possibility of multiple dimensions, some going so far as to theorize there are infinite. If there are infinite dimensions, and the intelligence or understanding of laws of reality in other dimensions is far greater than our understanding of them here on Earth, could entities dimension hop and visit us? This is a theory that I have proposed before. I proposed it for some shadow people and E.T. and their craft. John Keel and Jacques Vallée are incredible resources for this avenue of thought. Keel's Operation Trojan Horse was an eye-opening breakthrough read for me, and it allowed me to not think I was so crazy after all for seeing the consistent patterns through history and various phenomena and suspecting that there might be something to it. A singular type of being causing all of it. Are ghosts this underlying entity, flitting in and out of our dimension, presenting itself in a way that we can understand it within our cultural contexts and belief systems? All in this effort and motivation that it has always had. Humans have always been the common denominator in these phenomena, the common focal point Obsessed much? So, the question now is everything connected? Are all of these phenomena the same thing, presenting differently, and explained via entities from alternate dimensions? Or can and should we articulate a split here and see how some of these phenomena may simply be their own dealio? The idea of darker, deceptive, or trickster entities doesn't necessarily have to coincide with the multidimensional concept. I'm not sure where the religious think that heaven, hell, or the afterlife exists in space-time, but wherever that may be for them, this theory is a simple conclusion for them that the ghost is a demon in disguise. Or an angel, too, I suppose. Psychokinetic manifestations. Ghosts and hauntings are real because we are making them real. Or, more accurately put, ghostly manifestations and their activity. Poltergeist cases have been more thoroughly studied and tested above all others, and 9 times out of 10, the researchers and investigators have come to the conclusion that when it's not clearly a hoax, all of the activity is the cause of someone's own mind and psi ability. Often a teenage mind under stress, duress, intense change, disruption, upheaval. Joel Stern, translator of The Elusive Force, talked with me about the most insane poltergeist case you've probably never heard of, because it wasn't translated from Polish to English until decades after the event took place. Flying objects and projectiles, electrical malfunction, apportation, levitation, teleportation, all of which centered around this 13-year-old girl named Joasha Gajecki. And this all began for her following the passing of a close family member and a period of illness, and then would continue for years until it eventually slowed down and, we have to assume, ceased entirely, as is the case with other poltergeist accounts. There is already a mountain of evidence unrelated to ghosts that support psi ability in humans. This evidence all points to a very real, superpower-like capability of the human mind, beyond the biological limitations that we've already set for it. A capability that will either finally be discovered to be in addition to other features of the mind, or a capability and connection to a force outside of our understanding that completely throws our scientific dogma into the garbage bin. Can psi ability account not just for clearly poltergeist events, but for the rest of the ghost mystery as well? Can combined psi ability result in a location being haunted by the same apparition, seen, heard, communicated with, or encountered by numerous people, as was the case in the Philip experiment? Are we creating the ghost? This theory was a last-minute addition, but I'll throw it in there because, why not? Why not? Simulation theory. It is highly likely we are living in a simulation, and all of these weird things that we see might be programs, viruses, glitches, what have you. I'm gonna just keep digging for now. But you gotta give a nod to good old simulation theory, that old chestnut. I'm just gonna leave that one there for you guys to consider. Final theory I will mention for consideration. Ghosts are psychological projections or hallucinations. We are generating ghosts from our own unconscious. They are products of our mind under stress, grief, hyperimagination, drug use, etc., etc. And not in a psychokinetic sense, but in a your brain is making you hallucinate something that is not there and not actually happening sense. Carl Jung considered the collective unconscious, and he suggested numerous archetypes that we all share, as did Joseph Campbell. We see many repeating archetypes throughout folklore, in tarot decks, in pop culture, supporting this idea that we all share these similar unconscious representations deep within our psyches. Hence, why we might consistently see similarly described apparitions or entities or creatures during our paranormal encounters. I accept this theory to a certain extent. I do. It seems quite clear that humanity consistently hits on these particular archetypes that tie in very nicely with our primal instincts and our primal fears. The man in the hat comes to mind. We see him pop up in a lot of sleep paralysis episodes. You know, the dark intruder, the dark watcher, the shadow self, the authority. The jester is seen consistently in drug-induced experiences, primarily DMT. Personification of this trickster element, a representation of our inverted persona? I don't know. My question, can we see a repeating archetypal pattern within the ghost and haunting phenomenon? Or is it more sporadic and unique than that? Although we can see a pattern emerge, especially when tied to urban legend, such as the woman in white, the mischievous demon child, the black dog. I felt I was easily able to breeze over those types of encounters for the more individualistic, sporadic, synchronous type of story. Those stand out. Those scream consciousness of a deceased individual to me. I might be wrong. And that is not to say encounters with the woman in white or the black dog are not something to consider. Just wanting to point out here that though some of these accounts can be explained via psychological manifestation, there are outlier stories that just, they cannot. Same goes for the hallucination due to grief or stress. So, we have theories here that point to external survival, imprints of the past, inner processes, and just plain cosmic weirdness. Many apparitions can often fit more than one theory depending on how you look at it, which makes this conclusion all the more difficult. Let's explore these theories in the context of a real haunting, the Rock City Cake Company.
Thanks for selling your car to Carvana. Here's your check.
Whoa, when did I get here?
What do you mean?
I swear it was just moments ago that I accepted a great offer from Carvana online. I must have time traveled to the future.
It was just moments ago. We do same-day pickup. Here's your check for that great offer.
It is the future.
It's the present and just the convenience of Carvana. Sorry to blow your mind.
It's all good. Happens all the time.
Sell your car the convenient way to
Carvana.
Pickup times may vary and fees may apply.
Like I mentioned, Morgan and Co. would experience strange activity from day one. Objects being thrown, the first of which was a 2x4 from an upper loft area while they were still under renovation. Over the years, they would experience all sorts of things being thrown, from the mundane and non-threatening, like small pieces of candy and coins, pelting employees and customers alike, to the more alarming and unnerving, like an arrow and a wrench, luckily taking place when no one was around. But still, a food tray was caught on camera, violently flung off of a microwave and smashing to the floor when no one was around. There were electrical malfunctions with lights and their sound system, a mysterious fire once started on its own from inside of a tote containing only plastic and paper Easter decorations and a toy bunny. From this activity alone, we might think psi-caused poltergeist. But then, who was the focal point? Many of these occurrences took place in empty rooms with no one around, and any direct pelting of objects or interactions with the activity seemed to be equally shared amongst the staff and clientele. Early on, Morgan would describe the energy as heavy and unfriendly. This would change from day to day as if different personalities were involved. Sometimes heavy, sometimes mischievous, sometimes no overarching feeling at all, and they knew then that they would have a peaceful day. Also early on, the staff would arrive to work and find objects arranged in triangles. These triangles were intentionally created, formed from things like a twisted up blanket, 3 pennies, a toothpick, a pen, and the side piece from a pair of glasses. Was there something dark and malevolent present? Something from an alternate dimension? A knife found stabbed in the kitchen ceiling one morning would certainly indicate something like that. Was this trickster activity? Objects would move about of their own accord, sometimes appearing in random but obvious places after being hidden away or put away by staff, like a plastic Halloween spider bowl discovered dangling from a ceiling sprinkler head one morning. Some things would happen pointing to residual, such as the same banging sounds in the morning that couldn't be explained. Regular knockings. And the location of Morgan's shop would most definitely allow for a juicy residual haunting to occur. It used to be called the F.W. Woolworth Department Store back in the day. March of 1949, 7 firefighters responding to a fire would fall to their deaths when a floor gave away beneath them. What a devastating and traumatic event. Prime energy combo to encapsulate residual energy. But then there's clearly an intelligence and intent behind so much of the other activity. And there isn't a better example of this than a story that Morgan shared about a ghost hunting app that she and a fellow employee sometimes put on their phones. It made a very specific dinging noise to notify when a word populated on the screen when the program was open. The deal was they would upload the app, play around with it a little at work, and then fully remove it from their phone when they were done. It had been like a year or more since her employee had done this and had offloaded it at that time. They're at work one day. Suddenly, they hear the familiar ding notification. Pulled the phone out. The app is open, somehow already having been re-downloaded, all on its own. The word on the screen, leave. There's some real cosmic weirdness going on here, too, such as physical objects morphing out of paintings. Keep in mind, she's got security camera evidence of this happening. The spider bowls seem to be a favorite object of whatever energy is at this bakery. In addition to being delicately hung from the ceiling sprinkler, it would appear in all kinds of odd places after having been stowed away. Of its own accord, this object moved around and set up shop, unassisted by the living. Finally, Morgan would get a clue as to how maybe it was accomplishing this. It got so bad and scary that she would gather up all of the spider bowls and toss them. Well, a couple of days later, she notices something sitting on a couch in a seating area, a purple spider bowl. Goes back to watch the security footage. You can see it emerging from a painting on the wall over the couch. Just bloop, pops right out of there. On another occasion, she says she hadn't placed an order for Dr. Pepper in weeks. It was her drink of choice, just hadn't ordered more. So she knew for a fact that they were out. On this particular day, she was really craving one. Later that day, a can of Dr. Pepper was discovered on the floor, along with a small plastic skeleton decoration. The security footage clearly shows this can of soda appearing from a painting. A different one than before, flying to the ground, and then a moment later, the small skeleton sat up on a nearby piano, suddenly tumbles to the ground. This event and footage was very interesting to me. One, according to Morgan, the painting has a tear in it now at what appears to be the exact spot that the can emerged from. But two, in the footage, there are balls of light moving away from the recently fallen objects. Balls of light moving away from the activity. Orbs. Ghost lights. The lights captured in this clip blew me away because it was synchronous to another concept that I was researching. File that away for now. We're going to circle back to orbs. So, Rock City Cake Company, clearly haunted. Yes? But by what? A ghost? Multiple ghosts? Something darker than that? Are the staff and customers group thinking it into existence? Is everyone hallucinating? It's not an easy feat to stick this one in any one box, is it? Obviously, we know this haunting isn't the result of hallucination. Can't capture hallucination on film, can we? We know it's not being created by the group, by groupthink, because there are objective activities taking place away from the group, out of their direct control. And when they aren't even paying attention to it, the stuff is happening with or without them. We can see it's not being created by psychokinetic abilities, as is the case in any poltergeist event. There's no specific trigger person. The activity doesn't seem to bother any one employee once they leave. And this haunting isn't even a limited, targeted, subjective event. The location has been haunted for longer than the cake company has been in there. Employees of businesses in this location prior to the bakery have gone out of their way to ask Morgan if she has experienced weird activity that they experienced while working there previously. And it is worth asking the question, was it haunted long before that, prior to the 49 fire even? The cause of which isn't definitively stated anywhere. A mysterious fire that began in the basement, kind of like a mysterious fire that began in a tote upstairs some years later. Morgan thinks it's multiple things going on here, multiple energies and forces. I'm inclined to agree with her. A little bit of everything. And this is where we might run into a theory that I've recently been reminded about and have suspected previously that there is something to. Recent guest, Damian Shalacy, told me people are haunted, not places. We have a way of putting a face to our ghosts and hauntings via individual perception filters. He theorizes that it's not that nothing is actually happening, Quite the contrary. Something is indeed happening to the haunted, but the haunted is perceiving it in a certain way that is explainable via their established filter of reality. That something may look like an alien abduction, a Bigfoot encounter, a hat man, a ghost, but that's like an overlay of what's really taking place on the back end. He then told me all about his ant farm theory, and it made a whole hell of a lot more sense. Really simplified things for me. You should totally check it out. August's guest interview with Damian Shalacy and the effervescent, unparalleled, adorable Nicole Ricardo over on YouTube. It was awesome. But I do agree with him, in part because that goes back to humans being the common denominator in all of these paranormal events. We are the one existing feature that never changes, while the events themselves change forms across culture and time while still retaining similar formulas, But we can look at the Rock City bakery haunting and see some evidence that this is a place that is haunted by some things and some bodies. Whoever happens to be on the premises as a living agent is temporarily, objectively experiencing something that is already there, and there's intelligence to it that seems somewhat independent. I'm driving this point home to set myself up for my main argument. Amidst all of the ghost theories, though the survival hypothesis is the most well-known and accepted, when you get down to brass tacks, it actually becomes far less likely a reasonable explanation for ghosts. Residual hauntings are thought to make up a majority of ghostly activity. Psi phenomena make up a ton of poltergeist events and associated activity. We know for a fact hallucination plays a big part in these encounters for a variety of psychological reactions to grief and trauma. So, in the pie chart of theories, the survival slice becomes rather thin. But does this mean the entire ghost phenomenon is explainable only by these other means? I don't think so. All you need is one white crow. This disproves the statement that all crows are black. Similarly, all you need is one genuine medium to disprove the statement that all are shucksters and con people. One legitimate Bigfoot sighting to disprove they don't exist. And goes without saying, but just one real manifestation or communication with an intelligent, bodiless, conscious individual who used to be alive to disprove all ghosts are psi-fueled figments of our imagination. I've seen more than my fair share of white crows this season. I believe the survival theory, as thin as it may be in that pie chart, belongs there. So, instead of arguing the existence of the ghost, I am instead focusing the rest of our finale to exploring their reality. If ghosts are real, I want to understand how. And I have a hypothesis that I've been working on for a minute, and I will share what I've gotten together so far with you today. It's weird. Fair warning. You know the drill. We will start with a brief walk down memory lane and dusting off key moments from the season before diving into any final theories. But first, I would like to take 5 minutes of today's show to put some gratitude out there into the universe for folks who made this season so spectacular and helped me get through it in monumental ways, even if they didn't realize they were doing that. I talked to some phenomenal people this past year on the show who taught me so much. It's a huge deal for me to be able to welcome such knowledgeable and gracious guests to the program. And I will never not be grateful for that. So, in order of appearance, thank you to author and Bisbee historian Francine Powers, investigator, host of the Unseen Paranormal Podcast, and owner of the Mighty Haunted Night House, Eric Freeman Sims, owner of Desert Witchy Chicks and Good Energy Queen, Amy Zioba, author, spiritual director, and Jungian coach, Brandy Anderson, translator of The Elusive Force, Joel Stern, founder of Manimal Research and host of Paranormal Odyssey, Wayne Tutherow, author, researcher, creator of the Phantoms and Monsters Empire, and expert voice on things Fortean and highly strange, Lon Strickler, paranormal researcher, journalist, and author of Coal Region Hoodoo, Maxim Furyk, author of the Stories from the Archive series and host of Mystery Archives, Cody Richardson, creator of DroneTracker.app and the Bigfoot Mapping Project, Scott Tompkins, paranormal romance author, Kenneth Mogan, Gardnerian Witch, Discordian Pope, creator of Terror of the Unexplained, AI instructor, and author of Magical AI Grimoire, Dave Zilla, hosts of the Wandering Road Podcast, Chris Andine, investigator and host of the Don't Turn Around Podcast, Phil Rossi, and thank you to my final guests of the season, hosts of The Real Ghosts of and the Parapeculiar Podcasts, investigators, researchers, and curators of the Parapeculiar Haunted Museum, Nicole Ricardo and Damian Shalacy. Thank you all for joining me a million times over. For those listening right now, I have these good folks listed in the show notes with direct links to find my chats with them. About midway through this season, there was a change of events and a need on a personal level to pull back just a little bit. So for about the past 6 months or so, guest interviews were solely living on YouTube. All of these chats will be uploaded to audio platforms over the break for my audio-only audience to enjoy as well. And on the flip side of that, I've got a couple of special releases up my sleeve for my viewing audience on YouTube. I will be unearthing and releasing a couple of very special guest interviews from my early days of Paranorm Girl. Once upon a time, I never intended to release interview video, but that intention has evolved over the years, and I think those early guests deserve to be seen. So, if you are on YouTube, keep your eyes peeled for the PGP Dark Vault series coming over the next couple of weeks. Don't you love the names I just pull out of, okay. Thanks. Also, go to my patrons who allow this show to evolve and grow and help motivate me to continue the journey. I will be doing some individual patron recognition as we are saying our goodbyes at the end of the program, because my peeps deserve to be celebrated. But finally, special thanks to Steve and Alex at Nocturnal Frequency Radio, Jeff at BTF Publishing, Jason, Jim Brown, and crew at the Society for Arcane Studies, Gail Moss, Michael Extreme, Derek, David, Hair Force One, Sin Schrader Hill, Gregory Fedora, and my best friends, my pals, my homeboys, my rotten soldiers, my sweet cheese, good time co-hosts, D-Booze, G-Booze, and J-Booze at Beer Booze and Boogeymen. If you were mentioned and you don't know why, just know that this past year has been so trying. And you said or did something that had an impact. You helped Paranorm Girl in some pretty awesome ways. And I am grateful. All right. Put your shoes on. Let's take a walk. In the season intro, I stated my belief in ghosts. It was more accurately a faith in ghosts without really putting my mind to the why, what, and how of ghosts. I have since put that faith to the test, though I've become a bit more skeptical about the day-to-day anecdotal account. I have fine-tuned opinions on what they could be, including survival of a soul beyond the physical body. Something else I considered during this episode was this concept of being stuck. Here at the end, I do think there is actually a certain extent of stuckness involved. While I think a majority of cases of intelligent ghosts remaining does come down to desire to do so, there are tons of anecdotal accounts and real-world examples of the spirit who is shocked or surprised that they've been dead the whole time, that they've just, been hanging around, or they need to be directed to cross over as if the thought never occurred to them, or they didn't know how, or their fear of their fate kept them stuck here. Simply put, I think they're only as stuck as they allow themselves to be. There's a way out, but they need to choose that. During my talk with Brandy Anderson, one of the things she learned from her passed-on grandmother was that whenever someone dies, a portal opens immediately. She learned that most people just go right into it right away, no issues. But those who cling to life, don't want to go, have some fear, like her grandma, don't go through, and then the portal remains open. So when you tell the ghost to cross into the light, I think you're likely referring to their personal portal, which I suspect is the entrance to the tunnel with the light at the end. Oh, that makes sense. I did consider the strangeness of this idea that a ghost doesn't know they're dead. I've heard people argue that that's just impossible. You can't not realize you're dead when you've been haunting the same hospital for like 20 years and nobody's talking to you. Well, it's conceivable. Number one, linear time probably doesn't exist after death the way that it does here. Number two, there's this moment that's talked about in some past life and between life hypnosis regression sessions that emphasizes this downtime, recuperation, getting back to your whole integrated self that remembers everything. Some spirits are in a sort of shell shock when they come out from these incarnations. It may be a similar experience for the earthbound spirit. It's conceivable that they just can't sort it out on their own. Last thing, I also did talk about controversy and doubt in orbs. Man, again, we will circle back to that. I really enjoyed our look at the history of ghosts and hauntings. I always enjoy our history dives. Now, I was expecting the history to be long, but not since the very beginning of humanity. Long, Included in our early written record, alongside important information like properly growing food, building things, keeping society functioning peacefully, were ghost stories. There aren't many things today as old as the belief in ghosts. We discussed a change in the look of ghosts across time and across cultures. I am going to uphold what I said at that time and say that difference comes down to individual perception filtered through a cultural, social, or belief system lens. Their appearance has changed, while the underlying shared concept remains the same. We moved on to hauntings. I'm glad we took the time to compare benevolent versus malevolent and drove home this idea that just because there is malevolent activity, this doesn't necessarily mean demonic. Time after time, I have heard it stated that our personality doesn't all of a sudden change following our death. If you were an asshole in life, you're probably going to be an asshole in death, especially if you choose to remain near the 3D rather than cross over, where reports tell us there is that transitioning period of rest and others to help you through that, get through the transition and bring you back to your full integrated spiritual kumbaya self. You might not necessarily have anyone here who can help you through that revelation. We also discussed elemental hauntings. The human ghost is not alone in this ability to haunt. Other entities do as well. I also spoke to a concept new to me, the portal haunting. If you've got a location where weirdness seems to converge and supernatural activity is significant, Skinwalker Ranch, Rock City Cake Company, perhaps, these might be portal hauntings. It is theorized there's a tear or opening somewhere linked to a location acting as a gateway to ghosts and other entities to more easily exist in the physical space. Next, we examined numerous pieces of equipment and explored how and why they might work. A lot of paranormal equipment relies on its ability to read electromagnetic frequencies and fields. Whoever first suggested that we look to EMF to detect ghosts has no idea just how close to the mark they were, in my opinion. Stick that in your back pocket as well. We'll circle back. Right, the Polaroid ghost. Oh, I had forgotten how crazy this case was until I reviewed it for the finale. This was one of my white crows. Most folks who've done any superficial looks at this case will automatically call bullshit. I am begging you, if you haven't heard this episode, please go take a listen. Withhold your judgment until you have heard the whole story. Right, the ghost began making his presence known in the home of John Matkowski and John Huckert via images and words in developed Polaroid pictures. The Polaroid film in question was called Spectra film, and it has been discontinued for years now. Some sources say the communication stopped once the Johns ran out of the Spectra film. I do believe, though, it was one of the Johns, during an interview, said that they had picked up a little more with the use of digital, but if that's true, they haven't shared those images publicly. While I do believe there was something special to the Spectra film, allowing this intelligence to easily communicate, what I think was so special about it can be found in a few other cameras that we have today, and that would include any where emulsions are chemically reactive and can be influenced by static charge, pressure, or electromagnetic interference during development, like other Polaroids, and any that similarly use silver halide film that can be affected by ionizing radiation as well. The Johns did say they weren't able to capture similar anomalies using other Polaroid film, though. So, perhaps there was just something even more unique to the chemistry of the Spectra film, or different about the way it developed, that it's just not publicly available information. I can't be sure. But the evidence of this case and just the impossibility of hoaxery really points to something special about this film, able to capture particles outside of visible light and an unseen intelligence willing to utilize that in order to communicate in such a fantastic way. Though Spectra was sensitive to visible spectrum photons, it could capture near UV and IR depending on emulsion, and did produce, similar to other Polaroid user reports, anomalous results in some cases, this case being the most anomalous of all, forming full-on undeniable words. And I am still keen on the idea that Wright showed himself as a boo ghost in his first picture ever because he thought it was funny. In the episode about ghost lights, we discussed all of the possible real-world candidates for them. Will-o'-the-wisp, ignited swamp gas, ball lightning. I ended skeptically on this one. I now believe that was an oversight on my part. LEMUR, or the League of Energy Materialization and Unexplained Phenomena Research, spent years studying the lights at Brown Mountain, luminous balls of light that have been observed over Brown Mountain in North Carolina for centuries. One local belief is that the lights are conscious beings who live inside the mountain. In 1965, UFO researcher Ralph Lale believed he was in telepathic communication with them. I have a friend who has interacted with them as if they do, in fact, have intelligence. Other ghost lights have shown intelligent interaction, like the Hebron light, one of my other white crows. That story is nuts, by the way. Key findings from the LEMUR study of the Brown Mountain lights include the lights fluctuating in frequency. While unseen by the naked eye, the lights could be seen using infrared. It was observed at times these lights could switch over into visible spectrum seen by the naked eye before switching back again into infrared. They fluctuate in frequency. They can be present even if we cannot see them. Okay. Researchers also noted there to be a high amount of EMF being produced on the mountain. They also measured other anomalous energies whenever the lights appeared. They would conclude and offer up a theory that was more profound than I guess I was able to understand at the time. By the end, they felt certain that what was being created were balls of plasma. Local beliefs say they are intelligent. They are accompanied by high EMF and other anomalous energies and fields. They can be detected and present even if we cannot see them. Balls of plasma. Stay with me. Stone tape theory. I don't have much to add to the information that we covered. I think it was pretty thorough and still a great theory to explain how residual images and activities are trapped by certain materials. Re-listening to this one, though, did get me thinking about how certain people in group encounters see the phenomena while others do not, even in residual cases, such as the ghost soldiers at Gettysburg. Plenty of stories of groups of folks split down the middle of seeing versus not seeing them. If my final argument today can also explain how the residual ghost is seen, and we now know that plasma can be invisible even when present, but can be picked up by IR, perhaps the ability to see phenomena in the individual comes down to an individual's eyeball. If you Google the capability of the human eye, you will be told that we can only see in the visible light spectrum. If you dig deeper, actually, some people are claiming they are seeing things outside of that. Some are a little more sensitive to UV, and even more than that, are sensitive to IR. A small segment of the population can see or subtly pick up other light spectrums. Are these people more inclined to witness a ghost manifestation? Can this explain the visions reported of creatures during Vietnam with the use of the red-tinted goggles? Is the ghost phenomenon, intelligent and residual, present and overlapping with the physical world but existing just outside of visible light, outside spectrums of which a lot of ghost hunting equipment is used to capture. The Philip experiment, the ghost we made, incredible experiment that seriously speaks to humanity's intrinsic role in phenomena, but also how it presents. It speaks to that psi ability seen in poltergeist cases. And like Kenneth Batcheldor, who was creating Philip activity long before the Philip experiment was launched, like he said, belief bred further belief. PK activity could be achieved in this way, especially via a group effort. After hundreds of sessions, he felt it indicated a very real, though not yet understood, ability in humans. I agree. Going further, I think the Philip experiment gives us a glimpse into our power to not only create manifestations of activity, but to filter our perceptions of already existent activity. Philip presented in a way that the group collectively agreed he would, and his activities ebbed and flowed with the intentions and emotions and desires of the group. Now, I concluded that what the group had created was a sentient thought form. They created an individual entity who continued to be perceived by the group in a way that was acceptable to them, with a few, mischievous independent events sprinkled in, but an individual entity continuing to be perceived by them in a way acceptable to them because they created him. I suspect the phenomena we are not birthing from our psyches, the entity that is conscious and separate from us, might also present in ways acceptable to us via our cultural belief and social filters, basically allowing us to filter it to appear in a way we might expect it to. Could explain those cultural distinctions in ghosts from the pale girl with the black stringy hair in some Asian cultures to the mourning, wailing woman in white in some Latino cultures. Looks different, still a ghost. Or the differences in UAP accounts across the world and throughout time. They're all UAP, but am I expecting to see a flying saucer? Am I psychologically prepared to witness a triangle or a ball of light? Ghosts who solve their own murder, ghost children, ghost planes, trains, and automobiles, and ghost animals. All of these explorations that we did near the end of the season provided me with plenty more white crows. When the evidence is overwhelming and it's consistently undeniable that there is contact being made that would otherwise be impossible. When car crashes are being seen months after they happened, when thousands of people are saying they have seen or heard their deceased pet, when does this amount of evidence stop being coincidental and start being something worth taking seriously by science? I've always had issue with the person presented with so many examples of the same phenomenon and just explain it away without wondering, why are there so many? And instead consider how the exact phenomenon, such as the shadow figure, can be explained by sleep paralysis. Oh, it wasn't that? Then you were drunk. Weren't drunk? Okay. Drugs. Oh, don't do drugs? Okay. You were tired and hallucinating. Got a full night's sleep, did you? Okay. Well, it's dark out and pareidolia will make you see things. Oh, it was happened middle of the day, did it? What are we talking about right now? What the hell are we talking about? A whole checklist of arguments to work your way through, all to explain one singular entity, activity, event. That same phenomenon being seen by thousands of people. I'm probably not explaining this correctly, but explaining away something so prevalent and consistent with the next thing on your list because you just can't bring yourself to accept it at face value starts to not make sense after a while. Seems like maybe there might be a simpler way to go about this. Think William of Ockham had a philosophy for that. Okay, that concludes our walk through the season and key moments and ideas. My theory of the fundamental mechanics of ghosts is currently still in the making. It is not complete. I'm just going to tell you that right now, I'm still boiling the wort, so to speak. It's going to be a minute before we can enjoy a nice chilled homebrew, my brothers and sisters. But there are 3 key ingredients that I am playing around with for this batch. Individual perception is one, which I have already discussed. I've hit on it a few times today. The other 2 are consciousness and its existence outside of the brain and body, and plasmoids. There are many theories and views about consciousness that attempt to explain what it is and its functionality. Some theories state consciousness is but a byproduct of the physical mind and neurons firing. That is the materialist view. That's a favorite view of, doctors and scientists and the logical types. The others are the radical opposite, putting consciousness as a fundamental feature of the universe from which matter and reality can arise. One of these is called the field of consciousness hypothesis. In this hypothesis, put forth by Paul C. McComb, consciousness is a 5th force of nature, like gravity or electromagnetism. It is a field, and it is ever present across the universe. It is carried by these fundamental particles called psychions. Individual psychions are like little packets, each carrying information of life that has come before, but specifically carry something called qualia, which is subjective experience, memories, impressions, past emotions, and feelings. McComb theorizes when a person dies and the signal of psychions is cut off from the receiver brain, these packets of consciousness information disperse back out into the field from whence they came. When new people / receivers are born, these psychions are recycled, replicated, and entangled, and like a new broadcast, are picked up by the new person who is not born as some blank slate, but rather born carrying traces of past consciousness that they're getting from the field. Now, we can look at this in 2 ways. First, we might consider that all of these individual psychion particles of consciousness are all a part of one massive originating consciousness, the field, sending them out over and over again in different incarnations in order to experience, learn, and play the life game. Are we not actually individuals, but as Bill Hicks put it, all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively? Or we might consider the possibility and base this possibility on reports of NDEs, past life memories, psychic communications from deceased individuals, ghosts, that these psychions might be accruing together. and staying together to form what we would consider an ongoing individual, rather than bits of information dispersing back into the cosmos like grains of sand swept back out to sea. I have heard versions of this either way when considering afterlife theory. I think both are kind of beautiful. I like the concept that we are all but small parts of a greater whole, and we are all one, and yada, yada, yada. I know. But I do think there is more evidence that the second option is more likely when considering this field of consciousness hypothesis, due to things that, like I mentioned, reports of NDEs, past life memories, mediumship communications from the other side, and, so on and so forth. Those stories and communications would not exist, period, if a collective of these psychions forming together to create an independent consciousness that survives outside of a physical brain and body. Call that collection a spirit, a soul, whatever you wish. But if that didn't exist, but it does, it appears that is the case. There are plenty of reasons and plenty of evidence that points to the survival of the soul independent of the physical. But in attempting to dig a little deeper into what the soul is, where it comes from, where it lives, what creates it, in more scientific terms, I think field of consciousness hypothesis is as good a theory as any. And before we move on, just to put it into a very simple analogy so that if you are digging it, you can look into it more, you can describe it to someone else, whatever you want. Consciousness is like radio waves filling the universe and all that there is. Psychions are small packets of signal. Your brain is the radio that organizes the signals into the song and the commercials. And if the radio should break, the signal doesn't simply disappear. It just stops playing on that particular radio, but it can be picked up elsewhere. If that analogy stands, the ghost is this signal attempting to play, but without a proper radio. It continues trying to broadcast via locations, people, and inanimate objects. Doesn't work quite as well, if at all. We might get a lot of static. We might get a momentary burst of a song. It's certainly the right frequency on the physical plane. It's what they're used to. They just don't have the right equipment. So, I like this field of consciousness theory because it assumes two core principles. One, that consciousness is non-local. It exists outside of the physical. And two, that information is never lost. Whether it's dispersed back into the greater whole or remains a cohesive spirit, a self-containment of energy, information, and person, either way, it never disappears. Let's talk plasma, plasmids, and plasmoids. Plasma was first discovered in the 1870s by chemist and physicist William Crookes. He would witness what he initially termed this radiant matter inside of test tubes during experiments surrounding electricity and conductivity. He believed, based on the appearance and makeup of this mysterious, mystical radiant matter, that he had discovered a fourth state of matter. He was not wrong. A couple of decades later, when electrons entered the scientific lexicon, it was found there was nothing mystical or mysterious about this radiant matter, but that it was an ionized gas of particles. In the 1920s, based on the carrying of electrons and ions by this ionized gas being very reminiscent of the way blood plasma carried red and white blood cells, Crookes' radiant matter was renamed and plasma was officially coined. While plasma does appear on Earth naturally, it is a rarity, at least to the naked eye. Natural plasma generators include lightning and fires burning hot enough. It appears when we witness ball lightning and the northern lights. We can, of course, see man-made forms in neon signs and plasma globes. I had one of those when I was a kid. In the years following its discovery, a lot of research was put into it and how it worked. It was noted that plasma could emit light, moved unpredictably, and was highly affected and influenced by differing force fields like electrical and magnetic fields. While it is a rarity on Earth, it was discovered that plasma is abundant in space. It is thought to make up 99.99% of the universe. Stars are plasma. The sun, solar winds, rings around certain planets, nebulae, black holes as the result of dying stars, plasma. But it's also been discovered there are different kinds of plasma. Some of it exhibiting life-like traits, some behaving intelligently. Russian physicist Vadim Sidovich, who was well known in plasma physics, introduced a concept based on experimentation and simulation that complex plasma exhibited properties necessary to qualify them as candidates for inorganic living matter. He was not suggesting the plasma itself was alive, just that based on internal activities taking place with the particles of plasma, it could very well be a template for proto-life. Based on this concept that in some sense life doesn't necessarily require carbon and water, as we have learned it does, and plasma and complex plasma being so abundant in space, it is not surprising at all that speculation about plasma life forms have entered the discussion about alien life and UAP. Based on their appearance, their behaviors, their activity, some UAP researchers now theorize many of the unidentified objects that we are witnessing are plasma or plasma-based. From a paper published just last year in the Journal of Physics called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Extraterrestrial Life, Plasmoids, Shapeshifters, Replicons, Thunderstorms, Lightning, Hallucinations, Aircraft Disasters, Ocean Sightings, written by Ron Gabriel Joseph et al. There's a lot of them, so et al. I've got it linked. Their findings, theories, and conclusions in this paper are based on documented encounters from the NASA space shuttles, the MIR International Space Station, the regular International Space Station, U.S. Navy personnel, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The authors of this paper argue that many of these UAP sightings may involve plasma-like entities or plasmoids that behave in complex, seemingly intelligent ways. Observations that they state include self-illumination, pulsating, and shape-shifting, the ability to turn their illumination on and off at will, making sharp 90 to 180 degree turns while traveling at varying and at times excessively high speeds, interacting, chasing, or toying with spacecraft, satellites, or the space stations, interacting and diving into thunderstorms, hanging around above oceans before diving into the water. They are highly attracted to electromagnetic activity. They can pass through solid material like glass and metal. They have the ability to disrupt electronics and also to affect human mental states. The authors propose some form of sentience and or consciousness in some of these plasmoid events. Now, this paper is dense, but if you can get through it, and I recommend you try, you will see it's heavily fact-based, it's physical evidence-based, and these authors' argument is solid. If we take their argument at face value, UAP events, including the majority of sightings of the anomalous light variety, most people witness those, are intelligent and plasma-based. We can further drive home the intelligence of these plasmoids by considering a man named Chris Bledsoe. Chris has a long and very special connection with these lights in the sky. He communicates with them. He can call them to him. He has been studied. He's been visited and consulted by various three-letter government agencies. And you can see for yourself this man's relationship with the lights in action. An especially impressive example was for the show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Now, they had already met him and had him on the show previously to showcase his ability to call them in. This time, they set up an experiment to see if all electromagnetic influences were cut off. Could he still sense them when they were overhead? So, they had him chilling inside of this makeshift Faraday cage of a room, surrounded by copper on all sides. They told him when he sensed one overhead to just simply point or gesture that he sensed it. A team outside of the building would be filming and scanning the night sky. Chris would gesture 3 times, the first of which they thought it was the airplane that was crossing. Coincidental, for sure, but not the phenomenon. Nothing else was visible to the team during the following 2 gestures. Upon later review of the film, they would catch suddenly appearing and quickly disappearing lights exactly at the moment of Chris's first and second gestures that they were there. In that first one, that was indeed an airplane that they had seen. But there was something else streaking behind and below it that they wouldn't see until the review. Now, the third gesture also correlated with an appearance. That one they couldn't see with their naked eyes and only picked up on thermal, IR. So, Chris has shown that they will appear when he calls them in, and on the flip side, he can sense them when they appear. Kind of spooky, but obviously a psychic connection, something, conscious connection with what appears to be intelligent, unidentified plasma-based lights. At this point, I would like to revisit the Brown Mountain Ghost Lights study by Lemur. They also took note of the fluctuation of frequency in the lights from visible light to infrared and back again. They found these lights' appearance were accompanied by high levels of EMF and other anomalous energies as well. If the lights are creating high electromagnetic energies, which would similarly reflect plasma's doing of this can create interference and affect electronics functioning, such as the authors in the UAP plasmoid paper stated. And if Chris was still able to sense them even while confined inside of a Faraday cage, perhaps that communication has nothing at all to do with the electromagnetic energy that they give off, but another kind of energy, one of consciousness, based out of a field that is prevalently anywhere and everywhere throughout the universe, Faraday cage or no. The Lemur conclusion was that the ghost lights of Brown Mountain were balls of plasma. Again, seen over Brown Mountain for centuries, claimed by people who have seen them to be intelligent. What I'm saying is these plasmoids UAP researchers and witnesses are calling UAP are also the same phenomenon we're witnessing with ghost lights. And because ghost lights are intimately tied to the ghost phenomenon, smaller orbs of light captured on film, seen in haunted locations of all colors, same as plasma, performing many of the same behaviors and activities plasma can, going through solid walls and windows, interacting, chasing, and sometimes toying with people and investigators. What I'm saying is that orbs are real. They are smaller versions of beach ball size ghost lights seen over train tracks and mountains, which are smaller versions of UAP sized lights seen over the horizon, which again are theorized to be plasma or plasma based. I am trying to compare the microscopic to the macroscopic because I think they might be one and the same. Or the plasma being utilized by aliens and their craft is similarly what is being utilized by the collection of psychions, the soul, still trying to broadcast their signal to manifest themselves here in the physical. But they don't have the right equipment, don't have a physical form. Ghosts have been theorized to give off electromagnetic energy, and this is exactly what a lot of ghost hunting equipment looks for. Plasma gives off electromagnetic energy. Orbs and ghost lights have been shown to flicker in and out of visible range, changing frequency, similar to the on-off switch of plasmoids. Furthermore, in theory, the ghost is there, whether you can see it or not. Plasma can be present, even if you do not see it. Plasma is already known to be affected and influenced by different energy fields. Can we extend ourselves to imagine it might also be affected and manipulated by a field of consciousness? Something Paul C. McComb suggested was a fifth force of nature, like electromagnetism. Hey, here's something fun about plasma. It requires energy input, whether that be electricity, EM fields, or heat, in order to form and stay stable. Plasma needs energy to perform, so to speak. Let's say a ghost who is not physical themselves is utilizing plasma, the fourth state of matter, in order to manifest. And they are revving up their plasma vessel in order to manifest, to raise that frequency into the visible light spectrum or create enough force to knock a thing over. Could this process contribute to lights flickering, batteries draining, and cold spots? Electrical, magnetic, thermal energy. Brandy Anderson told me something that her grandmother relayed to her. At the time, I'd never heard it before, didn't really register with me. When asked what Brandy or anyone else could do in order to give a ghost energy to manifest or communicate, what have you. Fire. Fire, dudes. If you didn't catch it before, plasma is created with fire if it's burning hot enough. Based on my theory in the making here, in real time, Brandy's grandmother could have actually been saying, you can give me energy to manifest by creating some energized, highly ionized plasma for me. I imagine it would have been a lot easier for her grandma to just say, build a fire. It's possible. I hadn't gotten a chance to ask Miss Anderson prior to recording. I really got to do that. Pick her brain. Such an awesome lady. All right. Like I said, this theory is not complete. The bones are there, I think. It's good. It's conceivable. It is based on a hypothesis about consciousness, plasma physics, which only super smart people can truly comprehend, and then that living human component of perception of a thing. That's a lot of huge concepts to consider here in the final rush, but I really do think there might be something here. However, that is all I'm going to put you guys through for now. This has been your season on ghosts and hauntings. Some final words. That small slice on the pie chart representing the survival of the human soul after death belongs there. Ghosts are real. Today, we simply focused on how that could be so. But I did come around to orbs and ghost lights, so that's something. A lot more folks today are talking about this plasma component to paranormal occurrences. If it interests you, you want to learn more, check out Dana Kippel's work and also pick up a copy of Robert Temple's book. It's called A New Science of Heaven. Great resources, great places to start. This was my wild, harebrained conclusion based on the information that we have covered. What is yours, my dears? Message me at paranormgirlpod@gmail.com. I am curious what you think. As crazy as it makes you feel, be brave. Just say it. Life is all too short. Who cares? And if you don't know, have no idea, but just have faith that they're real, that's perfectly fine. Tell me that too. It's all just speculation anyway. Until we finally know for ourselves. Please join me for our final note. It is raining cats and dogs out there all of a sudden. I was going to dedicate today's finale to a person who was very special to me, had a huge impact on my life and the way I think, who sadly passed away a year ago. But because life is just a giant turn of events, last week I learned of the passing of another person who made a huge impact. And he leaves behind a huge hole for so many. So this one goes out to you both. Michael Cohen ran a geoscience bookstore in Libby, Montana, where I spent most of my formative years. He hired me to work there. First job. He was the biggest dork and nerd when it came to things like rock composition and formations and underground water flow, geological surveys and books. He had this small section in the store on paleontology where I would sneak over to when he wasn't paying attention to look through, flip through, admiring the pictures, reading the information, dreaming of becoming a paleontologist when I really should have been working. Sorry, Mike. Sorry about that. Mike saw something in me at an early age that I still don't quite see myself. He saw potential for something bigger. He would try in every way to help me to get out of Libby and go on to do bigger and better things, because that's what I wanted, but I just didn't think I could do that. He encouraged me to think about joining the Air Force, and I did. We met with a recruiter there in the store and talked options and free education. Mike was big on education. It didn't matter what I ended up doing. Put education first. The Air Force didn't pan out, thankfully. I really would not have been cut out for it at all. He often attended my plays and performances, knew I wanted to be an actor, started encouraging me to think about college. The university in Missoula had an acting program. And a couple of years later, he was the one to take me to check it out. He was there at my high school graduation. I have never seen someone look so proud. Once off to college, he helped me find resources, housing, everything I didn't think I could get because I didn't have someone in my corner like that until I had Mike. During college, he always stayed in touch, encouraged me to think about what comes after. Bigger and better things, forward motion, never stop learning. I could do it. And that's what I did, tried to do. I've lived in a lot of places. I've been many other people over the years. We would stay in touch. Every time I was back in Libby, I would visit, and it was always wonderful. He gave the best hugs. Always told me he loved me, and that he was proud of me. And I'm so thankful I got to see you, Mike, one last time before he got too sick to know I was there. One thing you guys would never suspect about Mike if you'd met him. He was a hero. He was a medic in the Army for decades. Following his retirement, unbeknownst to me, he took in numerous other lost pups like myself, counseled them, helped them, listened to them, and then sent them on their way, on the right path. In his final years, he sold a beloved vehicle to afford airfare and boarding in Ukraine. He despised what was going on over there to those poor people and was going to make a difference. And he did. He spent all of his time there, moving from place to place, teaching his lifetime of medical know-how to young troops and how to make do in the wartime setting. As explosions sounded in the distance with the threat of death at any moment, this 80-year-old man stood on business, passing on his knowledge and giving what he could to those who needed it most. I miss you. I will always miss you. But thank you for visiting me in my dream a couple of weeks back. It was good to see you bustling around in tip-top shape again. And Mikey, they are in fact all idiots, and we're doomed. Now, today's show is also dedicated to Dr. Jeff Meldrum, a kind, genuine man, a friend to anyone who ever met him, one of a kind, intelligent, willing to stick his professional reputation on the line and his neck out because he was a true scientist, the real deal. The impact Jeff's work had on me was profound in my search for answers about Sasquatch. He was an expert voice that I looked to. He had incredible insight and ideas that I consistently looked to. Made me feel less crazy and stupid. I'm not going to minimize the rest of the research I did on the topic or expert voices in the field that ultimately helped lead to my belief in something so many people still think is nuts. But if it weren't for someone like Dr. Meldrum, if it weren't for Dr. Meldrum, his body of work, his academic background, his innovative ideas, and his palpable curiosity, I suspect my conclusion on the matter might have been different. I am so thankful for our email correspondence early on. I was shocked, to say the least, when you messaged me back. I couldn't believe it. And I am so thankful to have met and talked with you in person at Squatch Fest. You will be missed, sir, while your legacy lives on. May we all encompass Michael Cohen's bravery and altruism and the radical amazement and tenacity of Jeff Meldrum. All right, we are going to wind it down and close it out. Before we wrap today, though, I would like to give you some information on when you can expect the next season to launch, what's next on Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen, and then end on some individual patron recognition. Before we do anything, though, please consider supporting the show with a rating and kind review. You can be constructively critical, but be kind. The world needs more of that right about now. Also, be sure to follow the show on social at Paranorm Girl Pod, and do me a favor. If you are watching this on YouTube, please give the episode a thumbs up and ensure you are subscribed, babes. All right. Season 8 will be premiering October 14th, and it's off to Appalachia with us. Between now and then, as mentioned previously, keep an ear out for audio from my live conversations with guests, moving over to audio programs, and then some unearthed video of conversations that I held with guests way back in the day over on YouTube. You can also catch me live during the break on YouTube with the rest of the B3 crew. We are hosting open lines on Thursday, October 2nd, 5 p.m. Pacific. Call in with any story or thought you got, whether it's paranormal, a reality glitch, odd coincidence, conspiracy theory, or just some high strangeness, existential dread that you need help processing. You name it, we want to talk about it with you. 208-717-1611 is the phone line, or submit your story to be read by the hosts by visiting ghost.beer. This show is brought to you by tons of coffee, mind-numbing theories, personal fascination, and the following patrons who help keep the lights on, the doors open, and the wheels a-turnin', baby. In alphabetical order: Adriana Gibson, Amy Zioba, Barely, Ben, Black Cat Report, D, Dave Zilla, David Aguilar, Dwayne Z, Gary, Gil with 2 L's, Jaden, Jeremy Whitman, Johan Bircher, Laura, Michael Extreme, Michelle Kennedy, Mick Naughton, Oscar Festa, Posey, Ray Garza, Star 421, Tassie, and Tiffy Rose. I appreciate the lot of you so dang much. If anyone is interested in becoming a patron and supporting our efforts in the new season, head on over to patreon.com/Paranorm Girl Pod. I do have a free tier you can utilize just to check things out over there. And if you decide you would like a little deeper access, like backstage guest chats, cool paranormal randomness I post sometimes, and even a piece of free merch, you can consider one of my paid tiers. I've got a few to choose from. I'll let you go look. That is going to wrap this one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will be back in 1 month, and we'll see you guys there. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.